At 62, I thought I'd seen every kind of hurt life could throw at a woman, but nothing prepared me for the betrayal that ripped through my heart like a jagged blade. My daughter's fiancé, Nathan, the man she loved with every fiber of her being, was sleeping with my best friend Carla, my confidante of 40 years, the woman I trusted like a sister. They thought they could hide it, but I found out, and now I faced a choice that kept me awake at night. Would I expose their deceit and risk shattering my daughter's world, or would I find a way to make them pay without losing her? That question burned in my chest as I stood in my kitchen, clutching my phone, staring at a photo that turned my life upside down. Let me know where you're reading from, and let's dive into this story together. My name is Evelyn, and I've always been the steady one, the woman who holds things together when they're falling apart. I'm not tall or glamorous, just a widow with graying hair and hands that know how to knead dough or weed a garden. My husband Tom died 12 years ago, leaving me to raise our daughter Sarah alone. I did it with grit and love, working as a school secretary, saving every penny to give her a good life. Sarah's my pride, 28, with her father's kind eyes and a laugh that lights up a room. She's a nurse now, caring and strong, and when she met Nathan 2 years ago, I thought maybe she'd found her happy ending. I wanted to believe it, even if Nathan's charm felt too slick, his smile too practiced, but Sarah was smitten, and I told myself that was enough. Then there was Carla. We met in our 20s, two young women scraping by in a small town, dreaming of bigger things. She was bold where I was cautious, her red lipstick and quick wit drawing people in. We became inseparable, sharing late-night coffees, secrets about bad dates, and tears when Tom got sick. When he passed, Carla was there, holding my hand at the funeral, bringing casseroles when I couldn't eat. She was family, the kind you choose, the kind you trust with your soul. So when I drove by Nathan's apartment late one Tuesday night and saw her silver Honda parked outside, I didn't think twice. Maybe she was dropping off wedding plans, I told myself. Sarah's wedding was 3 weeks away, and Carla was helping with the details. But then my phone buzzed and everything changed. It was 10:47 p.m., and I was home, still in my coat, brewing chamomile tea to calm my nerves. The text came from an unknown number, no words, just a photo. I tapped it, and my breath caught. It was blurry, taken through a window, but clear enough to see Nathan, shirtless, his arms around Carla, her red scarf dangling from her neck as they stood in his bedroom. The timestamp was tonight. My tea went cold on the counter as I stared, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. My kitchen, with its chipped yellow teacups and Sarah's childhood drawings taped to the fridge, felt like a stranger's house. This couldn't be real. Not Carla, who'd cried with me over Tom, not Nathan, who called me Mom and promised to love Sarah forever. I sank into a chair, my heart pounding. I zoomed in on the photo, searching for proof it was a mistake, but there was Carla's scarf, the one I'd given her last Christmas. Nathan's apartment, with its grey curtains and that ugly lamp Sarah hated. No mistake. My best friend and my daughter's fiancé, tangled together, betraying us both. Heartbreak clawed at me, sharp and raw. I thought of Carla's laugh, her promises of loyalty, the way she'd hugged me just yesterday, saying, "We're in this together, Ev." Lies. All lies. And Nathan, his betrayal cut deeper. Sarah was planning her dress, her vows, her life with him, while he was stealing her future. My daughter deserved better. She deserved the truth. But could I tell her? Sarah was so happy, humming love songs as she picked out centerpieces. If I showed her this photo, it would break her. She might hate me for it, or worse, forgive Nathan and marry him anyway. I couldn't risk that. I wanted to scream, to drive to Carla's house and throw that photo in her face, to call Nathan and tell him exactly what I thought of his disgusting lies. But I didn't. I wiped my tears, squared my shoulders, and poured my cold tea down the sink. Yelling wouldn't fix this. Tears wouldn't either. I needed to be smart, to protect Sarah without destroying her. I paced my living room, the hardwood creaking under my slippers. Outside, the wind rattled my garden trellis, where roses bloomed despite the autumn chill. I'd always been proud of my independence, my ability to face life's storms. Tom's cancer, single motherhood, a tight budget. This was different. This was personal. A knife in my back from the people I trusted most. But I wasn't helpless. I'd raised Sarah alone, kept my home, built a life. No one was going to disrespect that and walk away. Not Carla, not Nathan. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make them face consequences, not with a scene or a fight. Those weren't my style. My revenge would be quiet, precise, and unforgettable. By midnight, I was calm, my defiance stronger than my pain. I saved the photo to my phone, locked it with a password, and made a plan. Tomorrow I'd act normal, smile at Carla, nod at Nathan. I'd watch, listen, and gather what I needed. Sarah's wedding was coming, and it was the perfect stage. Nathan would get a gift he'd never forget, one that would remind him I wasn't a fool. As I climbed into bed, the ache in my chest didn't fade, but it fueled me. I was Evelyn, and I wasn't done fighting. The morning after that damning text, I woke with a heaviness in my chest, like a stone had settled there overnight. The photo of Nathan and Carla was still burned in my mind, their betrayal a fresh wound. I thought I'd faced every kind of pain, but this was new, sharp, personal, and infuriating. I could have called Carla right then, screamed at her for betraying me, for betraying Sarah. I could have confronted Nathan, wiped that smug grin off his face. But as I stood in my bathroom, splashing cold water on my face, I knew that wouldn't do. I needed to be smarter, colder. If I was going to protect my daughter and make them pay, I had to wear a mask, smile, nod, and plan in secret. I dressed carefully that morning, choosing my favorite navy cardigan and a simple skirt, as if looking put together could hold me together. My kitchen smelled of coffee and the lavender I kept in a vase by the window, but the comfort of routine felt hollow. I had a standing coffee date with Carla at 10 a.m., our usual spot, a cozy cafe with mismatched chairs and the best blueberry muffins in town. The thought of facing her made my stomach churn, but I couldn't avoid her, she'd notice. So I went, my purse heavy with the weight of my phone and that awful photo. Carla was already there, perched at our corner table, her red lipstick bright as ever. "Ev, you look tired," she said, stirring her latte with that easy smile of hers. I wanted to tip that latte over her head, watch it ruin her silk blouse. Instead, I forced a smile, my lips tight as a drawn bow. "Just wedding stress," I lied, sliding into the seat across from her. "You know how it is." She nodded, oblivious, launching into a monologue about floral arrangements and how Sarah's venue was just divine. Every word was a needle in my skin, her voice grating like sandpaper. 40 years of friendship, and she sat there, chatting like she hadn't been in Nathan's bed 2 nights ago. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood, and nodded at the right moments. Inside, I was screaming. I studied her, searching for cracks, guilt in her eyes, a nervous twitch. Nothing. She was too good at this, too comfortable in her lie. It made me wonder how long she'd been deceiving me, how many other secrets she'd kept. My heart ached, not just for Sarah, but for the friendship I'd thought was unbreakable. I wanted to ask her why, to shake her until the truth spilled out, but that would tip my hand. I needed time to think, to plan. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it, spin a story, maybe even warn Nathan. I couldn't risk that, so I played along, laughing at her jokes, agreeing the roses should be white, not cream. It was exhausting, but it kept her unsuspecting. When I got home, I locked the door and pulled out my phone. The photo was still there, a blurry knife to my heart. I forwarded it to my email, then deleted the text, just in case Sarah ever borrowed my phone. I needed more proof, something undeniable. Nathan and Carla were careful, but nobody's perfect. I called a friend from my old job, Linda, who knew a private investigator, discreet, no questions asked. I didn't want to be that woman digging into lives like some TV detective, but I didn't have a choice. Just a few checks, I told Linda, keeping it vague. For Sarah's sake, she didn't pry, bless her, and promised to get me a name by evening. While I waited, I thought about Sarah. She was at work, probably bandaging a patient's knee or joking with her coworker, unaware her fiancé was a snake. The wedding was 2.5 weeks away, and she was deep in bliss, texting me about veil options, gushing over Nathan's sweet proposal story. I couldn't tell her, not yet. If I showed her that photo, it would crush her. She might confront Nathan, and he'd lie, or worse, she'd forgive him. I'd seen it happen with friends' kids, love blinding them to red flags. I couldn't let that happen to Sarah, but I also couldn't let Nathan walk into her life unscathed, building a marriage on lies. He had to pay, and so did Carla, but it had to be my way, quiet, sharp, and final. That evening, Nathan came over for dinner, as he did most Thursdays. Sarah was there too, her smile bright as she set the table. I'd made my famous lasagna, the one Nathan always raved about, but tonight every bite felt like a test of my restraint. He sat across from me, all charm and compliments, calling me Mom like it meant something. "This is incredible, Evelyn," he said, fork in hand. I smiled, my stomach twisting. How dare he sit at my table, kiss my daughter's cheek while sneaking around with Carla. Sarah laughed at his jokes, her hand on his arm, and I wanted to scream the truth. Instead, I passed the salad, my voice steady. "Glad you like it, Nathan." After they left, I sat alone, the dishes piled in the sink. My defiance was growing, a fire in my bones. I wasn't just a grieving widow or a doting mom. I was Evelyn, the woman who'd survived loss, raised a daughter, kept my home. No one was going to disrespect that and walk away. The investigator called back that night, promising results within days. I didn't know what I'd do with the information yet, but I knew one thing: Nathan's betrayal would cost him. I'd make sure of it, wrapped in a bow if I had to. Every morning that week, I woke with the same fire in my gut, a mix of heartbreak and defiance that pushed me forward. I'd learned to weather storms, but this one was different. Nathan and Carla's betrayal wasn't just a personal slight, it was an attack on my family, on Sarah's future. I couldn't let it slide, but I also couldn't let Sarah see the cracks in her perfect wedding plans. The ceremony was 2 weeks away, and I was walking a tightrope, helping with centerpieces and guest lists, while secretly plotting a way to make Nathan pay. I wasn't going to scream or cry, my revenge would be precise, like a gardener pruning a rotten branch, and it was starting to take shape. Sarah's wedding was a whirlwind of beauty, white roses ordered, a string quartet booked, a lakeside venue glowing under fairy lights in my mind's eye. I threw myself into the details, meeting Sarah at the florist, nodding through cake tastings, all while carrying that awful photo in my head. Every smile I gave her felt like a lie, but I had to keep her bliss intact. She'd call me at night, giddy about her dress or Nathan's vows, and I'd listen, my heart aching. "Mom, he's so excited," she'd say, and I'd murmur, "That's wonderful, sweetheart," while picturing his smug face. I hated lying to her, but telling the truth would hurt her more. For now silence was my shield. Carla was another story. She kept up her act, texting me about table settings, showing up at planning meetings with her bright laugh and red lipstick. I avoided being alone with her when I could, claiming errands or headaches, but when we were together, I was the perfect friend, nodding, joking, never letting on. It was like wearing a mask made of glass, fragile but sharp. "You're a saint, Ev, handling all this," she said once, patting my arm. I wanted to shrug her off, to ask how she slept at night, but I just smiled. "Anything for Sarah," I said, and meant it. Carla didn't suspect a thing, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Meanwhile, I was building my plan. Nathan was greedy. I'd seen it in the way he bragged about his tech job, his new car, his big plans for a corner office. He worked at a firm with a reputation for being strict, the kind of place where ethics violations were a death sentence. I remembered a story from years ago, a colleague of my late husband, Tom, who'd been fired for misusing company funds. He'd lost his job, his reputation, everything. Nathan wasn't stealing, but he was careless, and that was enough. I called my investigator friend again, a gruff man named Paul, who didn't ask too many questions. "I need specifics on Nathan's work habits," I said. "Anything he's doing on his company laptop that could look bad." Paul didn't blink. "Give me a week," he said. While I waited, I watched Nathan like a hawk. He came over for dinner again, all charm, complimenting my roast chicken while Sarah beamed. I studied him, the way he checked his phone, the way he deflected questions about work with a laugh. He thought he was untouchable, but I saw his cracks. He'd mentioned a promotion once, how he was this close to a big raise. That was his weakness, his hunger for status. I started thinking about the wedding, the perfect stage for a reckoning, not a public scene that would hurt Sarah. Something private, something that would make Nathan sweat for years. By the end of the week, Paul came through. He sent me a report, short but damning. Nathan had been using his work laptop for personal emails, including some to Carla. They weren't explicit, but they were flirty, sent during work hours on a device his company monitored. It wasn't illegal, but it was reckless, the kind of thing that could cost him that promotion or worse if his bosses saw. I sat at my kitchen table, the report open on my laptop, and felt a spark of possibility. This was my weapon. I wouldn't confront Nathan directly, I'd let him destroy himself. I started crafting my wedding gift, a sleek USB drive, the kind you'd expect to hold photos or a playlist. Instead, it would carry those emails, disguised as a sentimental keepsake for the couple. I spent hours designing it, my fingers steady despite the ache in my chest. I copied the emails, added a few screenshots from Paul's report, and labeled the drive Sarah and Nathan's memories. I wrote a note to go with it. For Nathan, a special gift to remember this day. Open carefully. The words were polite, but the threat was clear. I'd give it to him at the wedding, privately with a smile. He'd know I had the power to ruin him, and he'd live in fear of when I might pull the trigger. It wasn't about exposing him to Sarah, not yet. It was about making him feel the weight of his betrayal every day. As I sealed the USB in a small ribbon-wrapped box, I felt a flicker of my old strength. I wasn't just Evelyn, the grieving widow or the doting mom. I was Evelyn, the woman who'd rebuilt her life after Tom died, who'd raised Sarah through sleepless nights and empty bank accounts. Carla and Nathan thought they could disrespect me, disrespect my family, and walk away. They were wrong. The wedding was coming, and my gift was ready. I'd protect Sarah's happiness and make Nathan pay, all without saying a word. The morning of Sarah's wedding dawned crisp and golden, the kind of day that feels like a gift from the universe. The lake outside the venue sparkled, and the air smelled of pine and fresh-cut roses. I dreamed of this day for my daughter, her walking down the aisle radiant and loved, but as I stood in my bedroom, slipping into my lavender mother-of-the-bride dress, the joy I should have felt was tangled with bitterness. Nathan's betrayal, Carla's deceit, they hung over me like a storm cloud. Today, though, I wasn't just Sarah's mom. I was Evelyn, the woman who'd turned heartbreak into a plan, and my wedding gift for Nathan was tucked in my purse, ready to strike. I smoothed my dress, squared my shoulders, and promised myself I'd protect Sarah's happiness and make Nathan pay, all in one day. The venue was a dream, white roses draped over an arch, chairs lined up on the lawn, a string quartet warming up with soft notes. Sarah was in the bridal suite, a vision in her lace gown, her eyes shining as she adjusted her veil. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her floral perfume, my heart aching with love and secrets. "You look perfect, sweetheart," I whispered, and she squeezed my hand. "Thanks, Mom, I'm so happy." Her words cut me, but I smiled, brushing a tear from my cheek. She didn't know about Nathan and Carla, and if I had my way, she never would. Not today, not ever, unless she needed to. Nathan was already there, in his sharp black tux, shaking hands with guests like a politician. His smile was all charm, but I saw the cracks, his quick glances at his phone, the way he tugged at his collar. I caught his eye across the lawn, and he waved, calling, "Looking great, Mom." I nodded, my lips curving just enough to pass for warmth. Inside, I was still. Carla was there too, in a navy dress that hugged her curves, laughing with Sarah's cousins like she belonged. I avoided her gaze, busying myself with the guest book, the programs, anything to keep my distance. Her presence was a needle in my side, but I wouldn't let it show. Today was about Sarah and Nathan's reckoning. The ceremony was flawless. Sarah walked down the aisle to a violin's gentle hum, her arm in her uncle's, her smile brighter than the sun. Nathan stood at the altar, his eyes on her, and for a moment I almost believed he loved her. They exchanged vows, promising forever, and the guests clapped, some dabbing tears. I sat in the front row, my hands clasped tight, my face serene, but my mind was on the small ribbon-wrapped box in my purse, the USB drive inside, loaded with Nathan's careless emails to Carla. I'd give it to him tonight, privately, with a note that would make him sweat. "Congratulations, Nathan. Be careful what you open at work." Evelyn, he'd know I held his career in my hands, and that was enough. The reception was a blur of toasts and laughter, the tent glowing with fairy lights. I danced with Sarah to her favorite song, her head on my shoulder, and for those 3 minutes I forgot the pain. But as the night wore on, I watched for my moment. Nathan was everywhere, clinking glasses, posing for photos, playing the perfect groom. I bided my time, sipping sparkling water, chatting with relatives. Carla tried to catch me at the dessert table, her hand on my arm. Ev, we haven't talked all day, she said, her voice too sweet. I pulled away, smiling tightly. Busy day, Carla. You know how it is. I turned before she could reply, my pulse racing. I didn't need her lies. Not now. Late in the evening, I saw my chance. Nathan slipped outside the tent, alone, loosening his tie as he headed toward the lake. I followed, my heels sinking into the grass, the gift box in my hand. The air was cool, the music muffled behind us. He turned, startled when I called his name. Evelyn, everything okay? His voice was casual, but his eyes flickered with something, nerves maybe. I smiled, warm as pie, and held out the box. Just a little gift, Nathan, something special for you. Open it later when you're alone. I kept my voice light, my eyes locked on his. He took the box, his fingers brushing mine, and his smile faltered like he sensed a trap. Thanks, Evelyn. That's really sweet. He slipped it into his pocket and I nodded, turning back to the tent. My heart was steady, my defiance a quiet flame. I didn't stay to watch him open it, but I didn't need to. An hour later, I saw him across the dance floor, his face pale, his hand gripping his phone like a lifeline. He glanced at me, and I raised my glass, just a fraction, before turning to laugh with Sarah's aunt. He knew, the USB drive, the note, they'd hit their mark. He'd spend his honeymoon, maybe his life, wondering when I'd send those emails to his boss. I wouldn't, probably, but the fear was enough. It was my revenge, wrapped in a bow, delivered without a single raised voice. As I drove home that night, the stars bright above my quiet street, I felt lighter. I'd protected Sarah's day, her joy. Nathan's betrayal hadn't won. I was still Evelyn, mother, survivor, and today a woman who'd taken back her dignity. The fight wasn't over, but this battle was mine. The days after Sarah's wedding were quiet, like the hush after a storm. I'd expected to feel lighter, basking in my daughter's new chapter, but the weight of Nathan and Carla's betrayal lingered, a bruise I could still feel when I pressed on it. I delivered my wedding gift to Nathan, a USB drive loaded with his careless emails to Carla, wrapped in a ribbon of quiet menace, and I'd seen the fear in his eyes. That was enough for now. I'd protected Sarah's happiness without shattering her world, but as I sat in my garden, pruning roses under the late summer sun, I wondered what came next. Had I won, or was I still fighting? One thing was certain, I wasn't the same Evelyn anymore. I was stronger, sharper, and no one would disrespect my family again. Sarah and Nathan were on their honeymoon in Hawaii, sending me photos of beaches and cocktails. Sarah's texts bubbling with joy. "Mom, it's paradise," she wrote, and I smiled, typing back, "So happy for you, sweetheart." Each message was a reminder of why I'd stayed silent. Telling her about Nathan and Carla would have broken her, and I couldn't bear that. Maybe one day, if she needed to know, I'd find a way to tell her gently. For now, my job was to let her shine. But Nathan, he wasn't off the hook. The USB drive, with its note, "Congratulations, Nathan. Be careful what you open at work." Evelyn was a shadow over his life now. He'd know I held his secrets, his career, in my hands. A week after the wedding, my phone rang. Nathan's name flashed on the screen, and my pulse quickened. I let it ring twice, steadying myself, before answering with a calm, "Hello, Nathan." His voice was tight, like he was forcing the words out. "Evelyn, about that gift, what's on the drive?" I could hear the panic, the way he tried to sound casual and failed. I leaned back in my kitchen chair, the same one I'd sat in when I got that awful photo of him and Carla. "Just some memories, dear," I said, my tone sweet as honey. "Photos mostly. Did you like them?" He stammered, something about not opening it yet, then hung up abruptly. I set the phone down, a small smile tugging at my lips. He was scared, and that was exactly what I wanted. I hadn't sent the emails to his boss, and I probably never would. The threat was enough. Let him live with it, always looking over his shoulder. Carla was another matter. She'd texted me a few times since the wedding, chirpy messages about how beautiful the day was, as if nothing had happened. I didn't respond. I didn't need her in my life anymore, not after 40 years of friendship turned to ash. One afternoon she showed up at my door, her silver Honda idling in my driveway. I was in my garden, gloves on, clipping deadheads from my roses. She called my name, her voice too bright, and I stood slowly, wiping dirt from my hands. "Ev, we need to talk." she said, her red lipstick stark against her pale face. I looked at her, really looked, and saw no guilt, just desperation to keep her mask on. I'm busy, Carla, I said, turning back to my roses. Maybe another time. There wouldn't be another time. I didn't need a confrontation to close that door. She left without another word, and I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried too long. Sarah came back from her honeymoon glowing, her skin sun-kissed, her stories full of laughter. She and Nathan stopped by for dinner, and I watched them closely. Sarah was all smiles, her hand on his arm, but Nathan was different, quieter, his eyes darting to me when he thought I wasn't looking. I served my lasagna, the same recipe he'd once praised, and he ate in silence, barely meeting my gaze. Sarah didn't notice, too busy recounting their snorkeling adventure. I nodded, laughed, played the doting mom, but inside I was steady. Nathan knew I held his leash, and that was enough. I didn't need to ruin him, not yet. If he hurt Sarah again, I'd be ready, but for now I'd let him squirm. As weeks passed, life settled into a new rhythm. I tended my garden, joined a book club, even started painting again, watercolors of roses, and the lake where Sarah got married. The pain of Carla's betrayal didn't vanish, but it dulled, like a scar you learn to live with. I missed the friend I thought she was, but I didn't miss her lies. My world was smaller now, but it was mine, built on my terms. Sarah called often, happy and unaware, and I cherished every word. Nathan stayed polite, distant, and I liked it that way. He'd never call me mom again, and I didn't want him to. At 62, I learned I was tougher than I thought. Betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't define you. I'd protected my daughter, reclaimed my dignity, and shown Nathan that disrespect has a price. My roses bloomed brighter that fall, their petals bold against the fading light. I was Evelyn, mother, widow, survivor, and I'd faced the storm without breaking. Nathan might sleep easier one day, but he'd never forget my gift, and I'd never forget who I was.